Oh, well, hello there. Welcome back to the Hardleg Discord Democracy Project TM. If you missed the last video where I announced what we were doing with this, there's a link down in the description. TLDR, I'm turning my patrons-only Discord server into a democracy. The patrons are going to elect from among themselves senators who will decide how the Discord is run, what kind of rules we have, what kind of boards we have. They might even organize something fun, like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament. Now, like any democracy, virtual or otherwise, the cornerstone is the Constitution, which I realize a lot of people, especially outside of America, but even inside America, unfortunately, don't really know what a constitution is or what purpose it serves. So I figured I'd take a little time to go over not only the Constitution that I wrote, but why I wrote it and what every part of it actually does. So the idea of constitutional theory, right, is that this is the government. The government exists because this document says it exists. It also lays out the rules, what you can and cannot do. Now, obviously, the whole point of democracy is that the people make the rules. They decide what the laws are, how things are organized, etc., etc. So having like a rule book does seem a little counterintuitive, How are they supposed to make the rules if the rules are already here? And that's why constitutions are generally very, very bare bones. They set up a framework or a foundation, something that people can build upon. And the general idea, at least the way I've always heard it explained, is that a good democracy is based on the idea of majority rule with minority rights. You want to set up the Constitution so that the majority of people have the rule of law. That way, you're doing the most good for the most amount of people possible. But you also want to stop those people from finding like a small minority, like 10% of the population, and making their lives into a living hell. So that's what the guardrails are for. That's what the framework is for. You're basically setting up how people are going to rule and what they can't do with their power. Now, unlike real life, there's not a whole lot you can do on a Discord server. This Constitution is very brief. It's like 3 pages. Because we don't have to worry about like inheritance or property rights or taxes or immigration or anything like that. It's fairly simple. That being said, I did try to give it an air of like professionalism. I tried to have it be very consistent in the way it was worded, and worded in a very particular way to kind of avoid rules lawyering and stuff like that. So for some people, this still might be a little bit difficult to read, which is why I'm making this video. I'm going to read over it, explain all the different parts, and that way all the people who don't want to sit down and read 3 pages, well, now you got a hopefully entertaining video. Alright, so like most constitutions, we start with a little preamble, basically just something explaining what the purpose of the Constitution is and what it sets out to do. In this case, I called it a mission statement because I think most people would understand that more than the word preamble. It's one of those words that doesn't get used a whole lot. I, Hardleg Joe, created the Hardleg Patreon Discord with the purpose of providing an enjoyable and comfortable community for the fans of Hardleg's content. In an effort to increase the enjoyability and comfortability of the community members, henceforth known as patrons, I hereby decree that the Discord server shall be run democratically by the patrons, so they may shape it to their liking. Thus, I grant authority to the patrons to elect from among themselves senators to represent their will in the Hardleg Senate. These senators will have the following powers: to make rules for the server, henceforth known as hard laws, to decide what channels exist as well as their layout, to decide what roles exist and what permissions those roles bestow, to grant and remove roles from individuals, and to declare server-wide holidays and organize events. They may do these things so long as it serves to make the server more enjoyable and more comfortable for the patrons, and so long as it does not shift the server's focus too far from Hardleg's content. Now, obviously, I've bolded these, I've underlined certain things, and that's because I want to make this part as clear as possible. The whole point of having this democracy, of having this constitution, is to make things enjoyable and comfortable for fans of my content. Those are like the 3 core ideals. You know, if you look at a regular constitution, usually it's like justice and liberty and stuff like that, but that's people's entire lives. You know, here, it's these 3 things. So, you know, if we ever have a constitutional crisis, if there's ever a question like, you know, is this law going too far? Does this change something fundamental about the server? Ask these questions. I had a couple people when I announced this, and they're like, you know, it'd be really funny if they turned your server into a Pokemon server. They can't. That's against the Constitution. The Constitution states that the server has to be about my content, or at least tangentially related to it. Like, obviously, we can have, like, other boards that talk about general life, or talk about, like, funny pictures, or music, or whatever, but you're not allowed to delete all the Hardleg related stuff from the server. And you know, the same thing, there's people theorizing, like, what if they make things miserable for everyone? What if the Constitution ends up, like, turning the Discord into a hellhole that people don't like? Well, then it's violating the Constitution. You're supposed to make things enjoyable. They're supposed to be fun. You're supposed to make things comfortable. Now you notice I don't actually, like, define those in strict language. And that's because I'm trying to avoid rules lawyering, specifically by being vague. You know, if I say, like, enjoyability means this, this, and this, people will find some loophole to work around it. By just having this vague sense of, like, you know if something is enjoyable, you like things or you don't. We can argue about it, we can disagree, but you've at least got to have the pretense of doing that. You know, if it's clear the majority isn't having a fun time, if they don't like what's happening, or if you're making something that is just completely diverting my Discord to another person's content or something, well then clearly you've gone off board. So moving on, in addition, the patrons will also elect from themselves moderators to enforce the hard laws. These mods will have the following powers: to kick and time out patrons who violate the rules, to delete messages which violate the rules, to create and manage channels in line with the Senate's designs. I didn't really talk about this as much when I was making the original thing, but there are essentially 2 branches of government. There's the senators that make the laws, and the moderators that enforce the laws. And those are kept separate for a reason. The senators don't have the ability to ban people, kick them, time them out. It relies on another group of people in order to do that. I think that'll help to prevent the senators from going on too much of a power trip. Despite making the rules and laws, they don't have the ability to silence people. The moderators do have that ability, but they're underneath the Senate. We have checks and balances, basically. They aren't perfect because we've only got the 2 segments, and the way Discord is set up, you kinda have to have a hierarchy. I can't give the moderators and the senators the abilities to both check each other. Like, senator is higher, but moderator has powers that are more impactful on individuals. So, you know, they're not perfect checks and balances, but we're at least making an attempt. You know, that's one of the key things that almost any democracy wants to do. The whole point of democracy is to spread out power amongst a whole lot of different people. If one person has too much power, then the chances that they'll use that for their own personal gain to hurt others is higher. It's like the saying goes, you know, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. But if you have 2 million people who all have power, it's hard for any one of them to wield it in a way that's, like, corrupt. Now, this next segment is something that most constitutions don't have, but I feel it's important to have specifically for this Discord constitution. A disclaimer: the Hardleg Patreon Discord is under the jurisdiction of both the United States government and Discord Inc. Therefore, anything illegal under US federal law or disallowed by Discord terms of service is automatically forbidden in the Hardleg Discord. Likewise, any hard law which violates federal law or Discord TOS is automatically null and void. Alright, so this segment is specifically here to avoid a situation that I saw in a Trolligarch video. I mentioned this last time, but that video inspired me to do this in the first place. It's about all these virtual democracies that failed. And one of them was a democracy run on Habbo Hotel, a corporation where you could actually, like, make real money. And most of their laws had to do with, like, business and how money is converted and who has ownership of different things. They had a whole bunch of stuff about, like, if you're accused of a crime, you have the right to a jury trial, you have a right to have the evidence seen and everything like that. But they didn't bother to make anything about, like, real world crimes because they didn't think those things would happen. And then one of their presidents got accused of, like, sexual harassment and I think grooming or something. It's wild stuff. Again, check out the video down below if you're interested. Needless to say, their own judicial system prevented them from kicking them out of the corporation because they hadn't violated any crime that their constitution had thought of, even though they were probably violating the crime of whatever country they lived in. So this is here just to be like, no, you're not allowed to do anything illegal. You're not allowed to violate TOS. You can't make it legal to say, like, the N-word on the server. I'm pretty sure that goes against, like, hate speech on Discord in general. Alright, so next segment is what I'm calling the Bill of Protections. In the American Constitution and a lot of other constitutions, this is called, like, the Bill of Rights, and it talks about, like, fundamental human rights that you have that can't be taken away by any government. These are, like, the guardrails even the senators aren't allowed to take away. I called it the Bill of Protections because you don't even have, like, a fundamental right to be on this Discord. Like, you are part of this community at the leisure of the community. So you don't really have rights here. You just have protections, things that I guarantee the Senate won't do. And, you know, in this case, I kept it pretty bare bones, you know, things that I just thought would apply to a Discord specifically. In the real world constitution, there's stuff like freedom of the press, freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, the right to a religion or whatever, and those aren't really relevant when you're talking about, like, a virtual democracy. Like, how would you even bear arms? It doesn't make sense. So we've just got a couple things here. So the following protections are guaranteed by this Constitution and may not be infringed upon by the Senate or the Moderators. No hard law shall discriminate against patrons on the basis of race, religion, ethnicity, sex, sexuality, or gender. No hard law shall be made which restricts the patrons from constructively criticizing the government or its politicians. That's essentially free speech. You have the freedom to criticize the government. You're not allowed to just, like, hurl slurs at them, though, because that would violate TOS, and you don't have the freedom to say whatever you want, but you can't be, like, silenced just for saying the government sucks or you want to see changes or you don't like how things are run. That's something that I think needs to be protected in order to have the government still be responsible to the citizens. No patron may be punished by the Moderators without good reason. Obvious, don't abuse your power. And any patron who is permanently kicked by the Moderators has the right to appeal that kick to the Senate. Again, just another check and balance. If the Moderators decide to boot you from the server, you do have one appeal to the Senate. Now, in addition to the Bill of Protections, I also have a Bill of Duties. This is something that is not in any constitution, to my knowledge, but I feel like it's something that should be in the Constitution. Something that says, like, okay, the government is giving you this, this, and this, we're guaranteeing these protections, and in return, you have certain responsibilities. Maybe that's what I should call this, the Bill of Responsibilities. I think duty sounds better. You know, duty has, like, a patriotic feel to it. So, the following duties are the responsibility of anyone who wishes to become a patron. Failing to do your duty is punishable by being kicked from the server. So it is the duty of every patron to donate to the Patreon. Only Hardleg himself may offer exceptions. So that's just there, essentially, to make sure that the Senate doesn't pass a law that turns my Discord into a public Discord, or, like, allows a bunch of their friends or alts to get on so that they can sway democracy. By putting this into the Constitution, it ensures that only the patrons are allowed to be here, that it remains a community based around my channel and my content. Okay, so next we have, it is the duty of every patron to be truthful. Knowingly lying in serious conversation is the highest crime of the server. This is something I'm not sure is necessarily needed in this Constitution, but it's something I would want to see in, like, a real constitution. Freedom of speech is good and everything because it allows you to criticize the government, but I don't like the fact that corporations can spend millions of dollars spreading lies everywhere. I think there should be some responsibility of citizens to tell the truth, to not just, like, lie about everything. So I figured I'd put that in there as a little nod. That does also help, you know, if people try to deceive others, if people do nefarious things. That covers almost like any crime that you could commit on Discord. And by limiting it to just like lying in serious conversations, it makes it so like, yeah, if you want to lie as like a joke or like sarcasm or whatever, that's still fine. But if the Senate or the moderators are asking you like, did you do this thing? And you try to cover it up and deceive them, and they find out that you're deceiving them, you're out of here, buddy. We can't trust you. And then just to cover all my bases, I also made sure it is the duty of every patron to maintain the integrity of our democratic elections. You may not cast multiple votes via alternate accounts, nor use bribery, intimidation, or any other underhanded method to sway voters. A lot of that I feel like is covered by the like no lying clause. Like if you claim to be someone that you're not, that's lying, and you know you're lying. It's not like a matter of opinion, like you're just deceiving people. But just to be extra clear, you know, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, and from there, it's mostly just breaking down all these different terms and what their actual purpose is in the government. Starting with citizens. All patrons gain citizen status once they've been in the server for 3 months. Only citizens have the right to vote in elections. They may vote for both senates and moderators. That right may not be removed or limited by the Senate. The Senate shall create and maintain a role which designates when a patron becomes a citizen. Once a patron gains citizenship, they can only lose it by being permanently kicked from the server. If a citizen leaves the server willingly and later returns, they retain citizenship. Also, I realize there's a typo here. There we go, I fixed it. So this is something I talked about in the previous video, and basically it's just like an anti-fraud measure. It's just to make sure that the community is for people who are actually part of the community. You know, I had one person on the previous video write a couple comments talking about how, oh, you know, if you don't let new people vote, you know, that's gonna be really bad. And you know, I don't want to put words into their mouth, but it seemed like they really wanted to join the server just to join the political process. And like, to me, that really stinks of, you just want power. You weren't interested in my community or me until I showed you that you could become a senator. And if that's the case, I don't want you here, you know? This is supposed to be a government by the people, for the people, not for outsiders who come in because they want to have a position of power. And then I also have a thing in there just to make sure, like, yeah, the Senate can't say that, like, voting is limited to only senators. They can't try to restrict voting in any way that makes it hard. They can't suppress the vote. And the Senate is also responsible for designating when a patron becomes a citizen and keeping up with that. If they fail to do that, they're violating the Constitution and they can be removed. Okay, so next we have the Senate. The Senate is a council of democratically elected patrons who have the ability to pass hard laws and generally organize the server as they seem fit. They shall accomplish this democratically using whatever method they deem appropriate, so long as every sitting senator is allowed to participate in the process. I didn't want to micromanage, like, how the Senate works. The senators kind of have the ability to manage how they want to do votes and whether or not they allow filibusters and all that stuff. As long as they do it democratically, like, they can't pass a law that says one senator has the ability to make all the laws. This makes it clear. You have to keep it democratic. You have to allow every senator to have some sway. Exactly how you do it, up to you. In addition to making hard laws, the Senate is responsible for interpreting the language of the law. If they cannot come to a consensus on the meaning of a law, they may appeal to Hardleg. So normally this is done by the judicial system, but I don't think we need a judicial system because there's only like 500 people here, and having a third branch of government would just be unweighty. Senators are also the keeper of roles, responsible for adding and removing roles from patrons. They may partially delegate this ability to bots if they wish, with the exception of the moderator role, which they must grant or remove manually. The Senate may not create a role which supersedes the senators or the moderators, nor may they pass a hard law that grants moderation powers or lawmaking powers to another role or patron. This is something that I was inspired by a little bit of feedback, because we did get someone who commented in the Discord. It was Smorgy Neo. They were asking specifically, like, could the Senate create like an organization to run tournaments for them and give them the power to like make boards or give roles and stuff? And the answer is yes, but they can't make like a Senate 2 that has the same powers that they have. They can't create another role that has like the power of the Senate and the moderators combined and then give themselves the role. Whatever power they delegate has to be less power than they already have. Additionally, there shall be 1 senator for every 75 patrons on the server. At the moment, I think that means there will be 7 senators, so a very small chamber. Senatorial elections will happen once a year. If a senator resigns or leaves the Patreon or is kicked from the server, the Senate must hold an election to replace them within 30 days. In order to run for Senate, a patron must be on the Patreon for at least 6 months. Senators shall be elected by the citizens using single transferable vote, and a senator cannot also serve as a moderator simultaneously. This is just general stuff. I don't think much of it needs explanation except for maybe the like, you must replace them within 30 days. That's to make sure they don't like impeach a bunch of senators and then keep them from electing new ones so that like a council of 3 can just hold power. Like at most they can do that for 30 days and then they gotta get another one. It's in the Constitution. What is single transferable vote? We'll talk about that more when I make a video about elections, assuming that this gets ratified in the first place. Finally, senators can be removed from office, impeached, with a 3/4 vote from the remaining senators, or a 3/4 vote from the moderators. Senators can be impeached for the following: violating federal law or Discord terms of service, violating the Bill of Protections or the Bill of Duties, obstructing the political process through inactivity, trolling, or stalling, cheating the political process through voter intimidation, voter suppression, bribery, sock puppets, fraud, or deception, or using senatorial powers in a way not sanctioned by the Constitution or hard law. I think that covers just about every way that you can be corrupt. Let me know if I'm missing anything, if there's anything not there, but I think that covers everything worth being impeached for. And that one in particular about like obstructing the political process through inactivity, that's there like if someone just disappears, we have a way to get rid of them. Technically, you know, oh, well, they haven't logged on for 3 months or whatever. We could just kick them out and replace them with someone else. So next up is the moderators, and the moderators are much simpler. They're a council of democratically elected patrons who are tasked with enforcing hard laws. There should be 1 moderator for every senator. Moderator elections happen once a year. If a moderator resigns or leaves, they have to be replaced in 30 days. In order to run for moderator, a patron must be on the Patreon for at least 1 year. And then, just the same, they have to be elected using single transferable vote, and if they're accused of breaking the rules or abusing their power, their case will be reviewed by the Senate, who will decide on an appropriate punishment based on current hard law. So, the moderators act as like a tribunal for the Senate acts as a tribunal for the moderators. They both have the ability to impeach each other, essentially. And the moderators, I put a much longer qualification time. You have to be in the server for a whole year, simply because their powers are the easiest to abuse. Because they're the only ones who can kick people and silence people, like, it would be really easy for them to just, like, kick a bunch of people out and then try to hide it and cause a big fuss. I mean, we would find out eventually, but they could cause havoc for a few days before we did. So I want to make sure that, like, if you end up being a moderator, you have to really be in this for the long haul. Like, if you want to spend a whole last year just to try to, like, sneak onto the server to become a moderator, like, congratulations, you earned it. Good job. The Senate's a little bit more open. I don't want to make it so long that, like, it's only the old heads. I want newer people to be able to do it. So we say 3 months to be a citizen, another 3 months you can be a senator. That seems fairly fair to me. And that just leads us to the final branch of government. Me. Hardleg. I, Hardleg, am the server owner. As such, I technically have final say over everything that happens on the server. I retain the right to veto any hard law, ban any patron, and remove senators and moderators from office. That's something that I don't necessarily want in here, but it's just kind of a practical reality. I can't give up server ownership to the Senate. We would have to give it to like one person. I'm not sure if we could transfer it every year. And it's just not practical, it being my responsibility coming from my Patreon. Like, at the end of the day, I own the server, I'm responsible for it. So if, you know, a whole bunch of senators start being Nazis, I ain't gonna allow no Nazis in my server. I'm gonna kick them out. However, I believe the patrons have the right to self-determination, which should not be infringed even by me. Thus, I pledge in this Constitution that I will strive to use the above-mentioned powers as little as possible and only take unilateral action in emergency situations. So basically, unless there's Nazis, you're just gonna be allowed to do whatever you want. Unless, like, the server is crumbling down and things are getting bad, I ain't gonna step in. But that's the emergency off switch. Some people like this could turn out really bad. If it starts turning out really bad, the Constitution gives me the ability to just end this. In addition, I retain the following governmental duties. I will bestow the role of senator to those who win the election. If there's a tie in the Senate, I'll cast the tie-breaking vote. If there's a conflict between the senators and the moderators, either side can petition me to step in as an adjudicator. And finally, the Senate may petition me to amend this Constitution with a 2/3 vote. That's the one thing I considered having a portion in here where the Senate can amend the Constitution themselves. And obviously in a real democracy, you need to have something like that. It's very important that constitutions be living documents that can change with the times and adapt to situations. But at the end of the day, again, I'm responsible for this server. The server exists around my content. You know, I don't have to make a system that lives when I'm gone. When I'm gone, the server's probably just gonna die. So I just put it in there that the Constitution can change, but you gotta run it by me. If a bunch of you really want it to change, and you have an idea, and that idea isn't like, change the Constitution to allow Nazis in, or change the Constitution to make it non-Patreon, then I should approve it, put it in, we'll make it part of it. Need to have a signature of His Majesty Hardleg, yeah. This last part reminds me of a constitutional monarchy. Yeah, essentially. This is what Trolligarch called in his original video a dual state. You have the state, and then you have, like, me. I have the power of a dictator. I'm just gonna be a benevolent dictator, you know? In conclusion, anything not covered in this Constitution is left for the Senate to decide. You know, someone just asked, is Mac-C legal? It's up to the Senate. If they want to make a law banning Mac-C, they certainly can. It is my hope that this Constitution will provide a sturdy foundation for representative democracy. I trust future senators to use their powers for good and to build a server that can be enjoyed by all. I have full faith in my patrons' abilities, and I wish them the best of luck in this endeavor. Signed, Hardleg Joe. And also, the patrons, question mark? Because here's the thing, I mentioned this in the previous video and probably should have mentioned it at the start of this video, but this Constitution is not official until it's ratified by the people that it governs over. The patrons need to accept this as the rule of law. Me simply saying it doesn't make it true. And that's why we're having a vote. Hopefully this video is going up on Saturday, March 1st, 2025, at which point there should already be a poll open on the Discord for the patrons to vote. A simple yes or no. Yes, you ratify the Constitution, you would like to see this put into action, you want to vote for senators and moderators, or no, Hardleg remains the dictator. You know, obviously, I think it's a pretty good Constitution. I think you would like some freedom. But I know there's a lot of people who are like, I don't really want to think about this, man. I just want to chill out and, like, occasionally see stuff about Yu-Gi-Oh! And, you know, I think we could improve the server so that your ability to hear about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is improved. Maybe there's more fun activities, more things we can do. But if you're just here to chill or whatever, then by all means, vote no. Again, the whole point of this Constitution, as stated at the very top, is to make the server more enjoyable and more comfortable. If this Constitution does not do that for you, if you think this would make you uncomfortable to have to worry about, if you think it would be a hassle that is not enjoyable, then vote no. But if you like all this, if you think it's a neat idea, if you'd like to have elections, and you think that your fellow patrons can make some pretty cool changes to the Discord that might make it more fun and interesting to be a part of this community, then vote yes to ratify this Constitution. And, you know, if they do, we'll have another video coming out pretty soon talking about the election process, talking about the first set of laws, because I actually did already write a whole bunch of laws in preparation for this. Something to set the baseline so that when the Senate comes in, they don't have to build a government entirely from scratch. And also those laws govern how the first election will run. So, you know, we have something to at least know how the first one will go. The Senate can change it for the second one if they want. And of course, if people vote no, or if the people don't vote at all, I think I set it so that at least 10% of the Discord has to vote on this. If we don't get at least 50 votes one way or another, I'm considering this a failure. No one's interested enough. Project ends, and this is the final video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this experiment with democracy. I thought it was neat, but you know, we'll see how it goes. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you had a fun time learning a little thing about constitutional theory, letting me yap about this neat document that I probably spent too much time writing up. Like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more potential updates, probably. And until next time, good luck and have fun.